What's up, dudes? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team. Pretty simple. We are a group of guys helping each other make progress towards each other's goals. If you're new to the channel, awesome and welcome. If you want to help support the channel and join our pro team, head over to rhomasteam.com/pro, where you can contribute to us on a donation basis. We also give you access to exclusive content, mastermind groups, etc., etc. So anyway, hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the team. Good morning, all. Rhomas Men's Team live session back in action. Mr. Larry, Mr. Ray, what's going on, dudes?
Ooh, life is good, Wes. Life is good if you want it to be. Moments of terror and hell, but, moments of good as well. Right, Larry?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. I've got a topic here, and as always, we're going to bring some dudes up. Guys, if you don't feel comfortable being out there on the internets, please do not come up. You are not, no pressure to come up here. I'd never want to share anything that, is close to somebody. This eventually gets on YouTube, like all that stuff. So all those disclaimers. Proceed at your own benefit and risk. Also, if you ever put anything on here that you are not comfortable with, just let me know and we'll immediately delete the episode. We're only out here to provide value, and I know that everybody's authenticity is what makes this group special. I also know that can come with, hey, I said a little too much, don't want that to be put out there, and we will totally respect that, obviously. So I saw an interesting comment last discussion on one of the guys who was sort of like in the beginning stages potentially of divorce, and one of the comments was, a man should not apologize. Now, this, to some people, this might be like, they might immediately say, oh, that's completely ridiculous. But I can tell you, I have sat in on one particular seminar that was a man seminar, and I'm pretty sure they said that. And it had a whole bunch of other things that were like of a similar vein. So I don't think it's to be dismissed. I think it's a legitimate topic to talk about. Larry, what's your first go at that statement of a man should not apologize, maybe because it compromises his foundation of strength or whatever the justification would be? Larry, what's your perspective?
If his strength is that fragile that an apology will break it down, I think we have a false sense of strength. Have twofold. One side is, watch out for the repercussions in the relationship. Secondly, it'd be great to be able to go through life never apologizing, but you'd have to be a perfect being who is not prone to trying new things or making mistakes. So that's kind of just the first reaction I have.
Right.
Yeah. I want to, first of all, a flood of counterpoints come to mind, but I want to approach this with compassion. So why would he? So Wes, before I get into my counterpoints, why do you think he would sincerely say this? Like, not because because it's surely not a man is here to take and conquer. I'm sure that's not what he meant, right? Like, what do you think, compassionately, empathetically, what do you think was the reasoning behind what he said?
Well, and before we get into that, this guy is really smart. I happen to have had several interactions with this guy. Really legit dude. My guess is because the second comment he left subsequent that was still take ownership for it, but don't apologize.
Okay. Got you. So I was watching. So part of the reason I'm in such a good mood is because I'm almost done my scorecard for the day. Sleep, weight, adequate water, goal review, active love, learning segment, journaling, movement, and meditation. I should have to do movement. The learning segment I did was I watched a Seth Godin video, and I'll post it to the Discord. It was the difference between leadership and management. And basically, management is there to make sure the job gets performed, right? No more than that. And a leader takes responsibility for his actions, his inactions, his risks, and his team's performance. Like leadership is a critical skill. Seth Godin mentioned that Viktor Frankl has this great quote where like the only problem with America is that it has a Statue of Liberty and it does not have a Statue of Responsibility. So when I think of like the upside of an apology, it is oftentimes it is taking responsibility it for your actions, for your team, whatever, taking responsibility, which is like a critical part of leadership. Leadership is a critical part of being a man, being the head of a company or a head of a household or a head of a tribe or a head of a community. So that's one way in which I would push back on that comment. Another is apologizing first, and I think we've covered this in recent weeks. Apologizing first is a way to like unlock an important, really emotionally charged conversation that needs to take place, whether that's a breakup, whether that is, the relationship, you want the relationship to go a certain way and it's not, like Gandhi said, if we were just going to operate by an eye for an eye, well, then the whole world would be blind, right? So apologizing first can be a strategic move to break through the frozen kind of egotistical, defensive, hurt parts of a relationship. Those hurt kind of static dynamics. In order to get to the conversation you really have to have. And then finally, I went to law school at Boston University, Go Terriers, for part of my education. And I took a course, the best course I took was called Trust and Honesty. I mean, this wasn't contract law. This wasn't, constitutional law. This was just trust and honesty. And I really want to, I want to order that textbook and read it again because there was something about like medical malpractice lawsuits and, how a lawyer might counsel a doctor not to apologize because that is, it's admitting guilt, admitting responsibility, and it'll create a liability for the hospital. And Larry, I think you might find this interesting that studies show that when a doctor apologizes for a mistake that was made in the operating room, the statistical chance of a lawsuit being filed goes way down because that person who was hurt just wanted to be heard and just wanted to be acknowledged. And that's the power of an apology. So
yeah, I think you have to be careful too of eroding credibility with your type of apology. Because we put a lot of expectation on someone, especially someone that has that degree in credibility that they're supposed to know what they're doing. And Ray, I like the way you opened it up, and I wish I had opened it up the same way, which was what was the context of not apologizing? Because I think that's absolutely critical, and I'm really curious about that, Wes, to get more involved in it because I can see one side of it is if you didn't do it on purpose, and I guess that doesn't matter, but if the only thing I think people need to apologize for sometimes is when it comes from a mean-spirited attitude. It comes from they said something that caused emotional damage to the recipient, and they did it on purpose. Not that I'm not apologizing for what I did. I did what I felt I needed to do at the time. I understand that may have made a negative impact on you emotionally, but yeah. So I'm very curious to get more info on that because I can certainly learn a lot.
Bring him up, Wes, if he logs on today.
Yeah, he's not here, and the context I actually think was like more universal. The way that I received the comment was, doesn't matter the context, never apologize. Like I literally think that was the same. A man should never apologize.
And do you like that, Wes? Did you get did that kind of like did that resonate with you in a good way? Like, did you identify with that?
Oh yeah, my inner tyrant was just like exactly no. I personally believe we need to have linguistic patterns that are symbolic of like, hey, we are in disharmony, and I feel like I may have played a role in that. So I think acknowledging either some sort of sympathy or empathy to other human beings is really important to patchwork the relationship again. Now, whether or not we're playing like linguistic gymnastics when we say don't apologize but take ownership, you start to get into muddy water of like, well, there's not too much difference. And you don't necessarily have a bunch of time to like say, hey, Ray, I'm not going to apologize to you, but I am taking ownership. Let's take 45 minutes to dissect that while you're raging mad at me. So I think an apology and in reality, a very sincere apology very often is the antidote to a lot of disharmony. That's my personal opinion. Phil, what comes up for you? Well, Phil might be having internet problems. I'm sure it's making him very happy. Ben, what is your position, bud?
Yeah, I start thinking of, I'm an AA guy, so I start thinking of the concept of like amends, where amends aren't necessarily just saying sorry, which may be included, but it's more focused on taking responsibility for things that you did in the past, and just letting go of your ego and getting that out there. Not to exclude saying sorry, but that's kind of what it brings up for me.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. I mean, I would actually reverse this. Does it feel to receive an apology, an authentic apology from somebody? So Larry, think of the last time you were upset, which I'm sure was probably when you were like 7, because you're such a Zendao guy. But like, remember back to that time, how good or not good, what's your perspective on actually receiving an authentic apology?
I as far as leadership goes too, because I've put a course around it where if you want to disengage someone from the emotional lock they have that has shut their frontal lobes down, so they're not going to be reasonable anyway. There's an old saying, don't try to be reasonable with the unreasonable. And when you start out with, I need to apologize to you. And as a leader, you've broken a wall down immediately. You've disenfranchised them from whatever argument they intended to make, because now they're curious. Because it's a real sign of respect for someone to apologize, to start out with that, and then they may say, I really was under the impression that you fully understood what our directions were in this organization, and I can see that my clarity was in lacking. So the apology idea is behind taking ownership and responsibility that result that you wanted and didn't get from that person. 9 times out of 10, since communication is such a challenging thing, you weren't as clear as you thought, and they bobble-headed you. You actually believed that because they were nodding, they understood what you were saying. And so that's one way that an apology can sometimes break through the tension and get someone's attention. Now you can have a dialogue.
Ray. Yeah, Ray, can you relate to that?
Absolutely, man. Like, I love that. That was so poetically like that. Get through the tension and get someone's attention. Like, I love that. That's what I was trying to say when I was like, like the apology can get through the kind of frozen shell of a relationship that's not working. And I also love what Ben said in terms of like AA, the AA kind of code of conduct, which is making amends, which, the word apology or sorry isn't in there in, I think it's step 8 or 9. Yeah, I think an apology is a powerful tool. Like, a man should never apologize. I think when I try to like deconstruct that, I think maybe I've been in relationships where I'm forced to apologize over and over again. You need to apologize kind of talk, you know. I don't know if anyone else's blood runs cold when they hear those words.
That's the last thing I do when I hear that.
Yeah, exactly. And so what that is that is a kind of like that makes me think of a kind of like power struggle, right? Where like where it's like this kind of like fight for supremacy in the relationship, and when you can force someone to apologize and force them to acknowledge that they are wrong, that you are right, and then you can get your way and you can have control. So in that way, that's a way that apology can be weaponized. But on the other side, a way that apology can be weaponized is like like I said before, in other words, it's an invitation to vulnerability, right? Look, I'm not perfect. I thought this was the right thing to do. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it hurt you. And so it can be a very powerful tool. And I wouldn't hesitate.
Okay.
And yeah, and it's not necessarily like kind of like giving up your power or losing or something in a kind of negative way. Go ahead.
Hey dudes, sorry for the interruption here. Just wanted to let you know, if you want to join our pro team, go to romasteam.com/pro. You can help support the channel. You will also get access to exclusive content, masterminds, one-on-one sessions, etc. All right, back to the episode.
What are any of you guys triggered by the phrase "I'm not perfect"? Because I'm curious if I'm the only one. Because to me, and by the way,
acute sense for the obvious.
Yeah, and by the way, Ray, I'm not saying that that's what you say in apologies and so on, but just to like bring up these patterns and actually zoom in on them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when somebody says like, "Hey, I'm not perfect, so here's my apology," it feels like a backhanded, like, "Of course I'm not God. So in this one mistake that I made, I'm so sorry." You know, like everything in there is like after like that. Just like nothing counts after the word "but" sort of a thing. Is anybody triggered by that, Ben? What's your thoughts on that?
I'm thinking.
Should I apologize for saying that, Wes? Go ahead, Ben.
I'm thinking of an example of so like my brother. He's someone that like never answers the phone and never gets back to me. You know, like we have something planned, and then I'm like, "Hey, man, what's up?" And then I won't hear from him. You know what I'm saying? And then when I address it, he'll say things along the lines of, "Well, I'm not perfect," or "I'm sorry," you know. And it's like, it almost makes it worse. It's like I wish I would have just never even said it, because it's just, this is pointless, you know. And also, one question: was the original the person who commented, did they say a man should never say sorry, or a man should never apologize? I don't remember what it was.
I think he said a man should never apologize, but
Okay.
I personally view them as both the same. Again, it might be, for me, it gets into like a little too, like you're trying to get to the decimal of like apologize versus sorry, etc.
I think
that's what it brings up for me, is that those conversations with my brother, where there's some things that are, you know, there's a spectrum of apologies, you know.
You know, that statement in itself, "I'm not perfect," is like the ultimate give up accountability statement.
Okay.
You know, where are you going to go with that? Of course, you're not perfect. But it's not, when it's said, it's usually said with the intent of, I'm still not feeling bad about how I handled this, because I'm hiding under "I'm not perfect." And if I was, then, you know, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. But this whole element of, I think that you talked one time about receiving, and I think receiving is such a huge role in our relationships. Is how do we receive, whether it's an accusation that's made against us, someone's arguing with us, maybe it's someone has made a comment that was hurtful intentionally, or there's just something about our behavior that people just darn right didn't feel good about, I couldn't relate to. I think how you receive that is you're either going to grow from it or you're going to negate it. And then you go, well, constructive criticism, all people do is they focus on the criticism, not the constructive. So I don't think we spend enough time thinking about what are ways that we can be better receivers of information to be able to hear more and receive more from those individuals that we're relating to. Because the greater understanding we have of where they're coming from, the better leaders we can be in assisting them and accomplishing what's important to them.
Yeah, and I think Kaizen is posting an excellent pattern here, which he says needs context because it could be someone who's a people pleaser and they are now overcorrecting from always saying sorry to never. So there's a very real pattern that I've experienced, honestly, like in a weird way with people on my team in business, of almost apologizing to the extent where it dilutes the term, so it doesn't mean anything. Plus, for me, and this is my own journey that I'm on, I cannot stand inefficient communication. Like in business, it's like those 3 sentences you just said, like, wasted 15 seconds. Let's move on. And you do it 5 times a day. So we're now at, a minute plus. But anyway, over exaggerating to me starts to feel elementary to the point where like you're questioning my intelligence. Oh, I'm just going to pull this apology out every single time I mess up so that like dummy Wes, right, will be patched up and move on from it. Phil, what's your perspective on you cherry pick whatever subtopic you want here?
Can you guys hear me? My app has been weird today. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I kind of don't really have anything that great to say right now. I think, it's defensive. The phrase like "I'm not perfect" is defensive, and also, I mean, my whole family are people, and myself included, are people that apologize without having any intention of changing. So the apology is not sincere, really, at all. The apology is just a defense mechanism. It's saying what it is communicating sincerely is it's saying I feel guilty to some degree, but it's not I'm going to do anything about that. So yeah, that's the problem. I don't know. It's hard for. I always wonder if what I could do to. Like my relationship with my brother right now, is very bad because both of us are upset at each other, and we're both people who aren't going to do anything about it because our egos are getting in the way. And the reason why I'm not trying to resolve this is because I know when I try to, he's going to do this kind of stuff. He's going to give me fake apologies, and he's going to be very passive aggressive and very defensive about everything. And even imagining that happening, and know it's going to happen, is just so frustrating to me because I don't know what to do about it. It's like I can't change him, and if he's going to keep acting this way, like what am I supposed to do? And I just wonder, like, what can I do about it? I'm sure if I communicated better, it could definitely improve something about the situation. I can't necessarily change his behavior, but I don't know. I don't know. I always wonder if there's something in terms of communication that could improve this.
Phil, what kind of relationship would you like to have with him?
I would like to either have a relationship or not at all. Because being in the middle makes me really sad. And I don't know. I mean, I know not everyone's family are great, and when I hear about people who actually have relationships with their family, it just makes me really angry that mine is so screwed up. But I don't know. I would like to talk and hang out every once in a while, but it's just hard to do that.
Yeah, Phil, how you described your relationship with the brother is a note for note identical to the relationship I have with my younger brother, which is like haven't talked in years, uh, both resent each other, both blame each other, passive aggressive, and it's painful, you know. Uh, it's painful because I wish I knew what I could do to make us best friends again, you know. Were you ever really besties with your brother, and would you guys had fun and stuff?
No, I mean we were never best friends. We did hang out, when it was more convenient, I think is the thing. When we both lived at home, when he was going to community college and I was still in high school, we hung out a fair amount because he had some free time or whatever, and that's just kind of why I guess is it was convenient, And now, it's not infinitely convenient, so we just don't do it. And I don't know. I don't know what to do. Like, I know this is me blaming him, so I feel stupid to even,
Dude.
start going down this route. But like, the thing is like
Helps me.
the thing is like, he's the kind of person, and all my family. For some reason, I'm not like this. I have like a big mouth, and the rest of my family are like I'm like kind of more aggressive. Most of my family is very passive aggressive. So when they don't like something, they're just like, you have to like twist their arm to get them to even confront you, which is very, I don't want to do that. I'm not trying to attack people. But like, so when it's become a situation where my brother is like it's like everyone kind of says that the culture is these days, like kind of my family feels like a microcosm of that, where it's like he's like off in his own world, and like when I talk to him, I feel like I just can't say anything, because I feel like if I say anything he doesn't like, he doesn't even respond. He just gets like quiet. He just like doesn't, like he's very, very left wing. I'm not right wing at all. I'm just like a normal, like kind of left, kind of right sort of person. And if I say anything about politics, it's like I could just feel this, like his stomach is like tightening up. I'm like, what? I don't know. I'm not saying it like, it's not like I rant about politics or whatever. It's just like, but if I just bring up anything, like, to some people these days, like anything is political,
Yeah.
So it's just like,
So,
it's like I just can't even. I don't even know what to do. It's like I can't even talk, because like if I say anything, I don't know. I feel like I'm just. I don't know. I feel like I'm looking like a huge dickhead right now.
No, Phil, like I said, dude. When what you're talking about is what I'm going through too. Now, my brother isn't left wing, which I'll just call brain damaged, because that's how I feel about left wing points of view. I'm kidding. But like left wing, right wing, like there are we have our own version of that, me and Frank, where we know how to trigger the other. Like if we can't like heal this thing and come together, well, we sure as hell know how to trigger each other, right? And that is that's where we end up too many times.
It's
Wes,
just like I feel like I'm willing to talk, and I feel like no one in my family is willing to talk, because it's just
right. Now,
even if I don't know.
I think it's more likely that both of us, I think it's possible that everyone in my family and everyone in your family is willing to talk, but we're stuck in these roles, or there's something blocking us. Do you know what I mean? And I don't speak for you, I don't speak for your family, but like I feel like I have made overtures to my brother. I have sent those texts. I've said hello. I've come up to the car to him and waved through the window, and he's just held the wheel and looked forward, like not even acknowledging my existence, which was actually great, because I got to feel like the bigger man, the bigger moment. So I should be thanking him for that.
It reminds me of one of the Carl Jung's statements about you be you, I'll be me, and if by chance we meet, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And the whole philosophy was you can't change another human being, and to spend time hoping that it'll be different is only to enrage yourself.
Well, here's the thing, Larry. It's like Phil said, I'd like to either have a relationship or know that I don't have one. And so I like that idea where it's like in other words, being at peace with the fact that I don't have a perfect relationship with my brother, and that's just part of the tapestry of life.
But if he chooses that, then he has to go out of the way to dismiss any reaching out that his brother may have, because it's basically, you're dead to me now. That becomes the ultimate.
And that doesn't sound.
Yeah, and that just seems like a. First of all, I mean, that's what I want. I'm so filled with rage. That's what I really want.
Yeah.
So I'm very
the lizard brain in me wants that.
Doing that.
Yeah.
I really, really strongly want to be like, fuck you guys.
Right. That's the emotional response.
That's bullshit. And yeah, I mean, right now, I asked my brother a few months ago, hey, let's go out to lunch, just like the two of us. And he said, hey, I'm going on vacation. I'll get back to you. And then he did. And a couple weeks later, he texted me back. He's like, hey, let's go out to lunch. And I haven't responded because I don't know, the same thing I said before, I guess. But it's just because I know that like it's either going to be us just like avoiding the situation, or if I bring anything up, it's going to be just bullshit. I don't know.
Can I add something here?
Yeah.
So here's my goals document, and inside of here, I've got certain identities for myself, and then also for my key stakeholders in my life, I have a page written out about them. So one of those pages is for my mother, and it's to remind me of it has sense is like, remember that my mom didn't leave me when my dad did, and she did all of this stuff and so on. Because when I zoomed out at a certain point in my life, especially after I became, college educated and so on, I zoomed out on the scaffolding and looked at my mother and I's relationship. And I realized that a certain percentage of that scaffolding above a certain floor was the foundation wasn't right. I wanted her to be a certain way, and she wanted me to be a certain way, right? Because as I age, I get more and more like robotic, right? So I want that type of heavy logic, right? Like, but I realized it's like me expecting that and her expecting me not to be. We're kind of fighting over the same Lego piece, like that same like little nut. So it's like we're never going to get that. So why don't we go down to the next level of scaffolding? Find the level of scaffolding that is on firm footing. And that's where we stay. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, because otherwise, if we build up from there and I want this space and she wants that, it's a, as John Gottman says, it is a gridlock situation. It's never going to be solved. Similarly, for my, I love them to death, my knucklehead buddies back from Philadelphia, that we are never going to relate on a certain level. But man, I love going for a long weekend with them, and like we knock around, we play basketball, etc. That's the level of the scaffolding that we can then relate. I wonder, Phil, how many rungs down on that scaffolding would you and your brother be able to relate in a positive way? And as soon as you get to a religious conversation, a political conversation, well, that might be the rung of the scaffolding. That's a no-go. That how many times do we have to learn from each other? Like when you go there, that's the level of the scaffolding that has wobbly legs.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that? Dude. Or Ray, please.
Okay, so like my mother-in-law is so like pro-Trump, like that it's just humorous to me to watch my wife, her daughter, push back at her, because I know now, because it's not my mother, I don't have the same emotional, visceral reaction. I'm going to acknowledge that. But as an outsider, it's interesting to watch how Sarah insists on calling her mom out when she just says these like nutty Fox News talking points, right? And so maybe Phil, like I think that's hard to do, but an excellent like piece of advice where it's like, don't go to the lunch and say, hey, brother, are you excited about the Democrats stealing yet another election in November? Right? All right.
Well, I'm not doing that.
I know. But Wes, the thing is, dude, like what you've described it so eloquently, Wes, in terms of the relationship. But Phil and I have such an emotionally charged, like we're both so hurt and angry at the breakdown in the relationship with our brothers that like personally, I don't know, I wouldn't know where to start Yeah, it's
Can I throw something in there?
yeah.
I mean,
When
yeah,
we don't exist without others around us, because that's the only way we know how we're doing. And when you think in terms of that, we really define the behaviors and actions of others based on how we behave. I listened to this, and I remember growing up with my sister being mentally delayed, my only sibling, and I envied people that could relate on a hateful or loving or indifferent way with a sibling, because I couldn't. So I listened to this, and there's still kind of that part of me that goes, God, they have no idea how cool that is, that they can hate each other, because otherwise there's no feedback. You're just a caretaker, because that's the way I was with my sister. And yet, by the same token, listening to you people, I recognize that how difficult it must be, because innately you love this person. There's a part of you that wants to have the relationship. Where you get off track is you're trying to define it first on how the relationship should be. And you haven't allowed them to participate in that. That's like going into a company, and the only person that knows the vision is the leader, and the rest of the people are somehow supposed to buy into it, and they haven't ever got any of their feedback on what would you like to see our company grow into. So I just throw that out.
Larry, I heard something amazing at the annual AA conference, or the province-wide, statewide. It's like, it's like a picture like a Tony Robbins or annual conference of salesmen. But in my case, it's a crippling fatal disease of addiction. So, but I heard this amazing thing. It's like where the guy said some version of like, don't identify the relationship or that employee or that spouse or that brother by the worst episode, right? So whether that's me, throwing my brother out of the house and refusing to pay him what I owed him for like his renovation. I think that's what he's identifying me as, right? And that guarantees the hurt. And I identify him as like, I quit partying and he continued. And by doing that, like we're stuck in this antagonistic role. So Larry, like, what do you think of the human nature, or like that trap we get in where we identify the person with their worst day?
Well, here's the challenge. We're so transparent. What we least like in another is what we despise most in ourselves. And so, we are just as open book as to how we feel about who we are. And so when you recognize that and say, what is it about myself that I find so distasteful in this other person, as opposed to, why is this other person so distasteful? Because we're trying, our brain, if you just look at the physiology of our brain, it's designed purely for predictability. We can't survive as a species if we don't have the ability to figure things out. And once we figure it out, like I don't like my brother, or my mother didn't love me, or whatever it was, then that's all we see. It's like that example I give. I ask a leader, how many times does somebody have to be late before you realize they're not punctual? And as far as the brain goes, one time. And then when the person shows up on time at the next meeting, people get sarcastic. Why? Because I didn't realize it, but I already made my mind up that person's not punctual. Now when I see them, this is all I recognize, is the disparity between the view I have and what I'm observing. So what's the answer to that? You need to change your mind about the person. You need to change what you're looking for, and instead of what you're trying to transform in another. And that's where it really takes a lot of pressure off. You can really chill and allow yourself to enjoy the person for who they are, instead of who you'd like them to be.
Yeah, Ben, what are your thoughts, bud?
So I'm thinking about the relationship with me and my brother. I'm tying it back into about talking about apologies. Is like when a lot of our conversations funnel down to me being like, well, if you're really sorry, it wouldn't have happened in the first place, which we've all heard that, maybe even said to us. It's like when that's kind of the shape our relationship is taken, then I'm just starting to kind of rethink my expectations for my brother and able to still have a healthy relationship. You know what I mean? Because I think what it hurts is because with your family, you have a different connection. At least me with my brother, it's like we have a different connection. So it really actually hurts when you have to lower expectations for someone where it's like, you have a special connection being a brother, but it could be anyone as well. But, so I guess when it comes to family and stuff like that, then I just think about managing my expectations,
Yeah, and as I read Alex's comments, he's basically saying a very similar thing. I want this relationship with my brother. I'm older than him. I moved across the country. I missed a lot of important parts of his life, but I still want a relationship, and it doesn't seem like he's willing to reciprocate because I'm hitting a wall, et cetera. I mean, it sounds like a lot of these are coming back to us of wanting it to be something different than it actually is. And we're also probably not considering the other person's perspective. Like Alex, and I say this out of love, probably from your brother's perspective, it's, well, yeah, I don't really know my brother that well. He wasn't there for my high school graduation. He wasn't there for whatever, my communion, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. So, but again, I come back to that scaffolding analogy. So it's like, okay, well, can you guys relate at some sort of level, even if that's just Thanksgiving dinner, and then trying to rebuild from there? And I think just logically, there might be a level of that scaffolding that will never be built. And can we accept that? And can we get that need met from somebody else? And it's okay to feel bad about that. But, Larry, what's your perspective on that particular take?
Well, I really like that, as long as you don't go down several rungs in your own life now. I think you still need to be an aspiration in the other's eyes, but yet you're not demanding, you're not condemning, you're not judging, you're not wishing, you're accepting. And acceptance is something that's difficult for people because, as I mentioned earlier, their mind's already made up to how they want it to be. And unless you take that sponsoring thought and get it rerouted and upgraded, then you're not going to see anything else. If I think everybody's an idiot, all I'm going to hear from them is where they're saying stupid things. Whether it's the most intelligent thing in the world, whether it would enlighten me and raise my level, until I raise my own, no one else is going to do it for me. And I have to be willing to be open to receive information to begin with. So I really feel for people that have challenges in their relationships. I have challenges in relationships too. I knocked myself out in a presentation the other day, and I got rave reviews. I mean, you're amazing, and your information was so relevant, and God, your presentation style was awesome. Like 50 of them, and then one said, I just couldn't relate to you as a person. I like the topic, but which one do you think I kept reading? And then I'm saying, who the hell is this asshole? And I'm trying to identify him in my mind. I'd done 4 groups in a day and a half, and I couldn't, and then I figured out who it was. And then I realized that person wasn't even in the same group. So it couldn't have been that person. So, I realize that the challenge we all face is we get hung up on the downside. And that's where our trigger, that's where our opportunity is. And I had to, and it wasn't easy. I had to say, and what are you to learn from this? It's pay attention. He was probably reaching out in that group, but you were so hung up on, presenting and getting your idea across that you missed it. And so next time, be open to that. Maybe chill a little bit. But we're all more alike than we are different. And I think that the more transparent we get, the easier it is for us to assist each other. But then by the same token, I'm not going to try to change any one of you. I find you all fascinating. And I learn and grow from each one of you. So we're not looking for the benchmark. I think the benchmark is what's capable for us. How much can we grow? That's our own benchmark. We'll get limited by somebody else's.
Larry, I love that. What comes to mind is like, what is the lesson here that I can learn? I'm not thinking of the relationship with my brother. I'm thinking of the relationship that I have with this difficult tenant at my mom's house. She has 3 rental units, and one of them is very difficult. I may have brought it up on a previous conversation. Because it is like every time she texts or emails, which is multiple times a day, I need to meditate and I need to pray in order to keep my anger under control. And so what is the lesson? So I had a kind of a mindset shift on this person after a couple of weeks of this nonstop harassment. And it was like, this person is actually giving me the opportunity to meditate more, to think about my powerlessness and be okay with that, to have conflict coming at me and not avoid it, face it, to have the opportunity to put it in God's hands, and like, which is something that Ben and I do in the program, which is like turn it over to God, which means like, I'm not gonna fester and ruminate on this all day and let it totally distract me. I'm not going to lose sleep over this. I'm going to turn this over to God, and God is going to guide me on his schedule on what to do here. So because there's so much hurt and pain in the estrangement with my brother, I actually haven't, until you said that, Larry, I haven't thought about what is the lesson here. Like, and again, I think it's the same thing applies. It's like, when I get upset and indignant and in a kind of like a swirl of outrage and self-righteousness, when I think about him and what he should be doing, what I'm doing, maybe that's an opportunity for me to pray or meditate. And with the result being that every time I get upset about that, I end up rather than me kind of like notching all this resentment, it can be an opportunity to to lean into my meditation practice.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on something that Wes brought up, is considering your vision of the relationship. So if I'm thinking of my vision of the relationship with my brother, I think that's probably, for instance, when I talk about him flaking on me, it's like, well, I was trying to get us to do a podcast together, or I was trying to get him to work for me, saying, I have this, this great opportunity. You can work for me. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be so much fun. And then I don't hear from him. So then it's like, well, are a lot of these things actually rooted in my vision of our relationship? You know what I mean?
Or self-serving somehow.
Exactly.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it has to. That's the only person we control over, is the one looking out of our own eyes. And then we're brought up thinking, because we're controlled all the way we're brought up, that we have that, we'll someday grow into that ability too. We're not, if nothing else, we're influencers. And if we maintain, you said, what's the lesson in all of this? For me, it's like, boy, my ego is sure in the way for me to be so upset about a negative comment. And I thought I was more mature in that. And then, that was ego too, thinking I was more mature in that. And I think that that's what's so fascinating about being able to experience one another, is when we stop trying to change someone and start looking for bringing that love to it. And I don't say this in a positive way, Phil, but I say that bringing the love is why we want the relationship to work to begin with. That's where the anger came from, is they won't love back. And so therefore we stepped down a few rungs in our own life. And then, it's tit for tat, like with Phil, with your situation, you wanted him to call you back and he did, but you refused to respond because you somehow thought, well, he's manipulating and there's really not going to go anywhere. And that's where we all live, is we've got to ask ourselves, is this really how I want it to play out? And if it's not, then, just deep breath and again, and as moronic as this may sound to some people, are you coming from love? And love doesn't have any judgment. There's no expectations. I just, it's like if I'm hanging with Wes, I just want to find out more about Wes. I don't want to argue his beliefs. I want to ask more questions about him so I can help him even understand his beliefs even more. Because through questions, he may find out that was a stupid thing to say, but he's got to find it out for himself, not for me saying, well, that was a stupid thing to say. Because now I just shut off the relationship. And that's why we just have to be able to kick back a little bit and tell me more.
Yeah, and Larry, to some of those points, the way that I'm viewing this is like the scaffolding analogy. It's got to be a least common denominator type of calculation, because it's not going to work otherwise. So who wants the lowest level? That's where, unfortunately or fortunately, the relationship is going to have to stay, or at least maybe start from. It also, to put it this topic, it doesn't mean you can't invite the person to the next rung. But I think, Larry, no different than when I invited you to our goal retreat, in April. It's, hey, the proper invitation, in my opinion, is letting the other person know, I would love for you to be there with me at this thing because I think you're awesome. But at the same time, I will not be upset if you don't join. Right? You will be missed, but you won't be judged or anything like that, because you've got your own life to live. So the invitation is the outer edge of the boundary. And that's it. So I wonder if we brought that into the discussion of, like, it doesn't mean that you can't take all of the scaffolding down to the level of, commonality, and then invite the person to the next round. And also, they could accept the invitation or not. If they do accept it, then you might discover again you reach the same problem. But, it might be a trial and error process. Phil, what comes up for you with that particular subtopic? Oh, I think you might be frozen.
It's kind of what I've been thinking.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I've been thinking is what I was thinking last time when we were talking about divorce. It's similar. I mean, Arjuna just said in the comments, bridging the gap in a family is like being the first person on a dance floor. Like, I was thinking yesterday, the last time when I said like, or whenever I said like, I have to take the ego hit in an apology or whatever, and no one ever wants to do that, usually. And like, the thing is like, the real thing is more like, it's not just like you have to take the ego hit and be like, I'm sorry. The real thing is like, you have to take the ego hit multiple times, most likely. Because even just saying I'm sorry, when relationships are complicated, people aren't going to just immediately come to your, like, they're going to continue to defend you. So, or your ways.
Is Phil cutting out for you guys? Sorry.
Yeah, probably.
I hear him.
Hey, Phil, so sorry, bro. You might have to restart that. It's very, very hard to hear you.
All right. Can you hear me now?
We can, yeah. You said taking the hit we got it's not just taking the hit, it's taking the hit multiple times lately.
Can you hear me right now though?
Yes, we can.
Seems like, oh, okay. Well, I don't know if I'm delayed, but no, if you guys can hear me. So I'm just the idea of like doing this type of stuff with my family makes me think like I said with my brother, like it's not just like a one-time ego hit. It's like going to be a constant or at least ongoing thing for a while during a conversation. And so that's something that I can't deal with, like I'll call my every once in a while stuff, and sometimes we have good conversation. Always like, I don't know what's going on with him. He just like has like very short attention span and like very little ability to like listen at all. And like, it's just tiring. It's just tiring. Like I know that I've known that for so long. Like I can be the person just reacting to him, just always, listening to him and saying something. If I notice I'm saying something that he's not even getting at all, he's not even paying attention to, I'll just, try to move the conversation back towards something he's more comfortable with. I do that, but it's just so tiring. It's like, a lot of times, I get very resentful, and it's like, I don't even want to fucking do this.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Phil. It is like crazy hard to hear you, brother.
Well, yeah,
I'm sorry,
Wes,
no.
I heard enough of what Phil was saying to think of something like, what comes first, being at peace with the estrangement or trying to heal the relationship? Do you know what I mean? Like, or I guess it's a kind of a chicken and an egg. What came first, chicken and the egg kind of
Yeah. I think
because I want to be at peace.
Sorry,
I'm not going to heal the relationship in the next hour with my brother, but I would love to be at peace with this, because I'm like, for Phil and I, like this topic brings up just like just a waterfall of negative emotions, right? So yeah, I think at a minimum, I'd like to be at a peace with the breakdown in the relationship, and at my most optimistic, I'd like to heal it.
Yeah, for me, what comes up there's two topics that come up for me. Number one is, if we're going to be the initiators and the leaders of wanting to mend the relationship to whatever degree we both mutually agree is acceptable, there is very likely going to be a latency. And the latency is probably correlated with the amount of disagreement or the length of duration of the disagreement. So it's kind of like weight loss. Like, if you've been accumulating fat for 27 years, don't think you're going to lose it in 27 days. So I recognize that latency. I also wonder, it's obvious, how much of this anguish comes down to expectations. I absolutely love my mother's dog because the dog can't talk. If the dog was able to say certain words, we probably find that we disagree, on abstract philosophical terms. But we're able to relate, like we have this like very simplistic exchange. So I wonder how much of it comes down to, if we can categorize a lot of this pain that we're talking about as simple. You're expecting for somebody to be a certain way or to say certain things. That is just not going to happen. Can you accept that and be happy with it? Larry, what's your position?
Well, I love to listen to you, Wes, as I do to the rest of the group. I love the dog dearly because it can't speak. I think that says so much, because we're all afraid of what might come out of someone's mouth would be detrimental to our own growth and development. Ultimately, I think that's the biggest fear of mankind, is rejection. I don't think it, I know it. But getting back to the acceptance side, listening to Ray in talking about the chicken and the egg, which comes first, be at peace or heal. To me, it's what's the number one killer in America today, and it's not cancer, it's heart disease, which outdoes cancer 2-1. The number one cause of heart disease is not hardening the arteries or too much cholesterol. It's what? Stress. And stress in America is known as a silent killer. So anytime we get upset, we pump our system with cortisol and adrenaline, which is not bad if we got a way to release it. But most of us don't. We just swallow it. I won't let that bother me. And over time, we start, degenerating as far as a human species, only because we're trying to make things go the way we want them to go. And we're in this constant state of tension. And so the whole concept of chilling and whatever you feel about the term acceptance, it's got to start with yourself. Don't we worry about accepting someone else's behavior. We got to accept our own. And once we choose to do that, we start to see what's acceptable and what's not. And for me to form opinions about you because of how you behaved in the past and then continue to bring that into the future is ludicrous. That's on me. I need to be open to the fact that you may have changed, but I won't let you change if I continue to hold on to that regret, that anger that I have for what you did. My mom didn't talk to her best friend for 30 friggin' years. 30 years. I never knew why until I grew up. You know why? Because my mother gave her a birthday present and she didn't acknowledge it. She talked to somebody else's. She obviously had something else on her mind. But my mom locked onto that and then, hello. And I asked myself, where the hell are you doing that, Larry? Have you accepted you? Or are you still trying to be this perfect being who's flawless? And it's really a kind of a sobering concept to be able to start there as opposed to, well, I'm going to accept you for who you are, when I haven't even done that for myself.
Yeah, I think there's another component here that I think is pretty illuminating, or at least was for me. And if you look at like the Joseph Campbell's, like the hero's journey, and I think this is in Star Wars, it's a whole bunch of other movies and novels, where if you accept the hero's journey, eventually, right, you get nagged and nagged and nagged, and like, all right, I'm going to go off on the self-growth journey, and then if you watch the movies, that hero comes back and the town is blown up, or the town's been raped and pillaged and so on, and that, from my understanding, that's supposed to be symbolic of, you can't go back home to the degree that you once knew home, right?
Yeah.
That is hard. And I've experienced that, right? We have this freeze frame of like, oh no, little Joey is little Joey. And I come back and it's like, little Joey, like, don't you want to hang out with me and be exactly how I remember you? And little Joey says, right? So it's like this concept of going back home is probably in a lot of situations not a reality. Right.
It requires a time machine.
That, brother.
Amen.
Right. And I think that's part of a man's journey, is like recognizing that the world is constantly evolving. There is no maintenance mode, and recognizing that and giving the grace of everybody to be on their own journey. Ray, final words of wisdom, buddy.
Best line I heard at the AA conference this weekend was, I wasn't a blackout drinker. I was a time machine drinker. Like I would wake up sometime in the future, place I didn't recognize, looked around and had to piece it together. So that's what comes to mind when you say you can't go back home, in that like change is inevitable. And changes in our relationships are inevitable. And I think that I absolutely think that I need to be at peace with the estrangement first, in that, like, to echo what Larry said, accept myself and then accept the other. And that'll just bring down the boil on all this resentment in my head. Which is just like taking up a lot of my bandwidth and Phil's bandwidth. So I want to thank you guys again for this like outstanding roundtable that really was personally valuable to me.
Oh yeah, Ben, final words of wisdom, buddy.
Big takeaway for me from the day is just thinking about managing expectations and thinking about, if you're putting your vision of a relationship before, the other person in the relationship. And then, Another thing I just wanted to add is like I started kind of just to win. I posted up, but I started with like the club um, right when I started online school again. So just being like more mindful, I feel in general. I've been like killing it at school. Everything's been done like way ahead of time. Last time I went to school, it was, I mean, I don't think I turned in one assignment ahead of the due date. So far, I'm like days ahead. So it's awesome.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah, getting involved is cool. So
I love the older, wiser Ben. I love him.
yeah.
Ben
I do
Kenobi.
too, buddy. I do too.
And Phil, I'm sorry. I know it's frustrating as hell when somebody tells you your audio it sucks. It's also frustrating on the other side. It's like it's one of those things where like both parties get really frustrated with it. So Phil, I'm sorry if you are still with us. I think you're not freeze framed. Final words of wisdom, buddy.
Oh no, it's fine. I understand my connection is really bad right now. But I don't know. I I was thinking about it. I don't have any words of wisdom right now. I don't know about it.
All good, brother. Larry, I'll pass the mic over to you, buddy.
Well, one suggestion I would make, and to myself first, and then if anybody wants to jump on it, is once you decide to allow people to be who they are and kind of discover them, don't create an expectation again. Don't go, I did all this work now. I'm trying to give a level playing field, and you still are a shithead. You're still expecting something by the transition you're making. Get over it. Get over that. I mean, you're all you can do is be the best version of yourself, and then let the rest of it take care of itself. And when there's a conflict, do the best you can to resolve it. But start with questions first before you give your position away. Because once you give your position away, and Ray can appreciate this, the gavel's going to come down. You're leading the witness counselor, and it's not a fair playing field. So watch the expectation. If there's any expectation at all, it's that you're going to enjoy them no matter how they come across, and you're going to stay on your rung, keep climbing, and maybe you'll bring them along with you.
Yeah. And well said, Larry. And the final piece for me is actually, we didn't really touch on this, but this is what I see in the background here is the invisible economy. Bringing something to the surface and having an intentional conversation, I think oftentimes, if done in the right way, can be really illuminating and help make a lot of progress. So if I want my relationship to be different or evolve with my mom or whoever else, maybe I should consider having a conversation with her. Or my estranged whatever friend, et cetera. Hey, I'd like to I know this sounds weird. It's not a normal conversation, but I would like something out of this relationship. Would you like the same? What can we try? And it might even start as simple, something as simple as we go to play mini golf together or whatever the heck it is. And we don't even talk to each other. What level can we actually agree on? So we bring it out of the invisible cloak and we actually put it on the table to have a discussion. So I'm gonna try doing that with a couple people and see how it goes. But as always, I love you guys. Have a great week. If you need me at all in the meantime, reach out. Love you guys. Later.
Thank you, Wes.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, brothers.
Thank all of you.